Excuse me. Pardon me.
Hey, sit down.
So I don't buy video games released by EA or Activision. And the reason I don't buy video games released by either of those companies is because I don't like the business practices that have been put in place by the executives at either company. EA especially has been terrible in recent years. And I know that not movies, but I think that applies in general, that if I don't like the way a person thinks or acts, I won't feel right giving them money. The idea of voting with your wallet against bad practices, against bad people and bad ideas, I think is an extremely valid one. A director of a film who I don't agree with, I will not see that person's films. Most likely, I certainly won't pay to see them. I think that that's totally fair. I think that a work is a manifestation of the person who created it, and it gets into the sort of issue of auteurs and whatever. If you're saying the director is the sole author of this work, and the thousands of other people involved can't overcome that one issue, but it says their name, it is in effect their movie or the studio's movie, and I don't generally feel great about how studios do their business either. So using that argument doesn't really fly with me either.
And I think that it just kind of depends on the situation. My answer is always, it depends, but I think it does. Like, I think if the work itself is doing or related to something controversial, then that is totally like grounds for being controversial. That's totally grounds for it to be judged in that sense. But I think that if it's not, if it happens to be made by a person that has done or said controversial things or holds controversial views, that's not necessarily grounds to be able to judge a work on that sense. But if you have that sort of background information about this person who made it, it can make the work a lot more interesting, and it can make a lot more dialogue and a lot more sort of interesting coloring of what the work actually is.
I think in a perfect world you would, yes, of course, you wouldn't patronize things with people whose opinions were just plain wrong. It just, it wouldn't happen. But it's really just difficult to actually pull that off. You have to be on top of everyone's opinions, number one, and then you have to not like things, even though they're really good. So Ender's Game's a perfect example. Amazing book. I'm dying to see the movie. I'm not going to be paying for it because it'll be a press screening, so I kind of cheat out of that one. But it's tough, and it's one of those things where you say you want to say one thing, and you want to be like, yeah, I'm a great person, and I'm not going to give money to someone who is bigoted. And then on the flip side, you really want to see the movie. So it's a very tough line to balance between, I think. To answer the question totally correctly, you shouldn't patronize bigots, and you shouldn't support them. You can't separate the art from the person, because the person directly profits from the art. They just do.
I think when it comes to people wanting to boycott movies or boycott books or boycott certain creators, whatever, I think that's fine, because it's a personal decision that's based entirely on personal ethics, personal ideology, and how you feel about that person and what they believe. I can't really say for another person what they should or should not spend their money on. What I can say is I'm actually glad this happens, because it shows that people are being active consumers rather than passively giving their money to whatever. I mean, you're actually thinking about what your dollar supports and where your money's going. In the case of Orson Scott Card with Ender's Game, here's a guy who is homophobic, who is part of an organization that is actively trying to outlaw gay marriage. So it's very likely that, he will put money he makes from that movie towards those causes. And people who feel passionately about same-sex marriage, equal rights, and civil rights, I don't think they should feel like they should support something like that, or a person like that. it gets a little difficult because you also have so many other people involved with the making of this movie. So, once again, that's a personal call on the individual consumer. Think of like Roman Polanski as well. Here's a guy who makes incredible films, but he's also a rapist who fled the country, so he wouldn't face justice. I mean, that's some sleaze dick shit. That guy's a horrible person, but he makes good movies. It's, I wonder every time he puts out a movie, will I compromise my own sort of feelings and my own sort of ethics? Inevitably, I just wind up like watching it on TV or watching it on a streaming service, which, in the end, money still goes to him. Or, think about Gary Glitter, who is a pedophile. Or think about Mel Gibson, who, Lethal Weapon 2, Lethal Weapon 1, and friggin' Road Warrior are great movies, but that guy is such an asshole. Or, Scientologists. Think about those guys and how kooky they are and what the Church of Scientology represents. You make all these decisions. Even the iPad. I mean, you might be all about workers' rights, but I mean, the conditions in those factories are so bad. But once again, it's good that people are making these decisions and are coming to terms with having to figure out where their dollars are going when they're supporting these things. Anything that makes you a more intelligent consumer rather than a more ignorant consumer is a good thing, I think. And anytime you have to think about where your money's going toward, something about that is actually empowering, I think. All that said, when Ender's Game comes out, I'm going to pay to see 12 Years a Slave, and I'm going to go see Ender's Game, just sneak in from the bathroom or something. Because in the end, Steve McQueen needs my green. Orson Scott Card can go fuck himself.